What's up, guys? It's Justin Stenstrom from EliteLifeNutrition.com, and in today's episode, we talk to Brandy Gillmore. Today's episode is entitled How to Master Your Mind and Energy to Heal Your Body. And Brandy Gillmore is a globally recognized mind-body healing expert who has profoundly impacted lives worldwide due to her extraordinary ability to demonstrate radical healings and transformation using the power of the mind. She has been featured in documentaries and has spoken to audiences globally, including giving a mind-expanding TEDx talk. Brandy's incredible discoveries originated from her own debilitating injury, which left her reliant on a wheelchair, walker, and cane. Without hope for recovery, she embarked on a search for a cure that ultimately led to a profound breakthrough understanding of the power of the mind. After healing herself, Brandy founded the GIFT method, GIFT method, a step-by-step process to help others activate their incredible ability to heal themselves. If you're wondering how to use Brandy's teaching to heal yourself, using your mind, check this episode out now. You're going to love it. Really quickly, just a quick note on this episode. It's really one of the most incredible, eye-opening episodes I've done in a while. Brandy was an incredible guest, and just I learned a ton. And as you'll see in the interview, like I'm just kind of blown away in several points of the interview, like really just like amazed at like how impressive this stuff is. But Brandy reached out to me after the episode just to be clear on a specific part of the episode, and I told her I would add this note in the beginning, which was basically that she talks about there's a part in this episode where she talks about healing, helping someone heal from a tumor. She just wanted to essentially just make it known that that the tumor was a benign tumor, and it wasn't like a cancerous tumor. It wasn't like someone's life was in jeopardy right away or anything like that. She just wanted to be clear about that because she seems very transparent and like open about like everything that she's done, to the point where she wants to be very clear on the science behind what she's talking about. So just to be very clear, she mentioned, so here's what her assistant said I'd say, that she mentioned a woman who healed a tumor using her mind and wanted to clarify that the woman did not have a cancerous tumor. Hers was benign. The patient was not a candidate for chemo, and so Brandy was wondering if that portion of the conversation could be edited for accuracy. And I told her if I could just read that and tell her that I would be more than happy to put a note in the beginning, because Brandy is an incredible person, incredibly transparent, incredibly honest. Everything she does is amazing enough on its own. She doesn't have to exaggerate anything. And like if she was a little unclear in this forthcoming episode, like I think it's towards the end where she's talking about the tumor, she wanted to be very clear before I even get into that part about like the fact that it was benign. But that doesn't take away anything at all about what we talk about in today's episode. And in fact, I think you're going to be blown away, just like I was blown away with just how incredible some of this stuff is. And I told her I've gotten the book. I don't have it actually on me right now. I should just whip it up. But I got the book, came in 2 days ago. I haven't read it yet, but I'm going to zip through it because it's incredible. It's fascinating. This topic has always fascinated me. And, I just love when people go out there and really like kind of change the game of like what we think is possible, right? So like what is actually possible. And it seems like Brandy's doing that. So you be the judge for yourself on how incredible and mind-blown you're going to be in today's episode, but I absolutely loved it, and I think you're going to learn a ton. So stay tuned and enjoy this interview with Brandy Gillmore. All right, guys, we're live. It's Justin Stenstrom from EliteLifeNutrition.com, and my guest today is Brandy Gillmore, the author of the new book, Master Your Mind and Energy to Heal Your Body. Brandy, thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Justin, it is such a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. It's a pleasure to have you on. And as I mentioned before, just a couple minutes ago, I'm a little stuffed up, getting over the flu. Had it for about a week and a half. It was pretty bad for a couple of days. And then I actually started doing photobiomodulation, which I kind of forgot about. And I can't really get too much into this, because I don't want this to get like taken down from certain platforms. You know how it goes these days. You can only say certain things. But there is a lot of research actually about photobiomodulation, red light therapy, for being able to help with viruses. So they did some research on that the past few years because of, everything that happened. And I actually remembered it being effective for different viruses I heard in the past. So I just started literally zapping my face for like 30 minutes straight, like this powerful, it's the Juve light that my friends from Juve sent me a few years back. And I don't really use it too often here and there, but then I was like, let me try this out. And I started doing it about 30 minutes in the morning when I got up, and then like 15 minutes later. It's kind of a lot to just like, it's intense to put it right in front of your face. But anyways, I can't say for sure that it was the Juve light, the photobiomodulation, but I started feeling better within a few hours after doing that intensely on my face. And then a couple days later, I felt great. So again, I can't attribute it exactly to the red light therapy, but I definitely think it helped a lot. And I'm feeling a lot better, just a little stuffed up still, and kind of like getting over the remnants of the flu. So, anyways, long story short, I'm happy to be back today. And I'm happy to have Brandy because I think we're very much aligned in a lot of ways as far as, mindset goes, mastering your mind and using energy to heal yourself in a number of ways. I'm curious to hear about your background. How did you get into this kind of stuff, Brandy? Like, what is your teachings, your some of your background as far as like healing modalities, that type of thing.
Absolutely. I got to say, this is literally the last thing I ever thought I would be doing. I used to do network engineering and operations, and that was my background. Then I got injured and I had an accident, and basically overnight went from living a full life to being wheelchair, walker, cane, and an absolute mess on morphine every day. My doctor saying there was nothing they could do for me. And if somebody told me that I would be able to heal with my mind, I probably would have been offended and said, this like clearly I have physical injuries, I have a physical accident. What do you mean I can heal with my mind? So I would not have thought that that was actually realistic considering my condition. And I would say so. A lot of my history, yes, I've been certified in this, that, the other, a certified practitioner, certified in natural healing, PhD in natural healing. All so after I healed myself, I got all of the training, so to speak. But I would say the real, like the certifications, the paperwork, if you will. Um, but I would say that the real training was medical journals and starting to look at anomalies and saying, what is everybody overlooking? And that, like, so if you ask me, my real training, medical journals, looking at anomalies and analyzing that, um, that's where I'd say the core of my teachings come from.
So when you say medical journals, do you mean just like doing your own research, like studying all these scientific papers, these, as you mentioned, anomalies of people that have healed using these like weird, far out techniques that mainstream medicine or science wouldn't be able to explain?
Exactly. Like, one thing I started looking at is when they said I wasn't going to heal, I had tried, the meditations and the theta state and the delta state and the frequencies and the energies and all of the things and the diet, the supplements, and everything that I could think of. And while some things could help a bit, nothing was healing my body. And I did that for years and it wasn't working. And I thought, okay, well, I really need to understand how this works. And so, obviously we all know about the placebo, which is a fake pill. And if we can have some type of healing results from a fake pill, it made me want to understand even more. And so realizing that, a lot of people mistakenly think that the placebo is about belief. And that was like one pivot, was a lot of people think, well, oh, you just have to believe it's going to work. But then I found something called the open label placebo, which is exactly like it sounds. It is open label. Both the doctor and the patient both openly know it's fake, and it still works. And so it was just like, okay, well, there's that. And then also finding medical journals which showed that people with multiple personalities could have different ailments when they're in different personalities that were incurable ailments,
Uh,
and even high blood pressure in one, or diabetes in one but not in another, or blind in one personality but not in another, or all of these different things. And so I'd say just consuming medical journals and neuroscience and everything from metaphysics to quantum physics to neuroscience to psychoneuroimmunology, just saying, okay, everything's pointing at the mind. Why? That was trying to figure it out.
Yeah, there's so much I want to dive into here. This is like one of the most fascinating topics. I have a really broad mix of things I'm interested in, and this is like one of the top things. So this is great. So when you say that it's not the placebo effect that is actually doing the healing, what in your best estimation is actually going on, like scientifically, if you can explain it? as to why the placebo effect actually works.
Okay. So I would say a few things. So I would say that, uh, I would say one, there's communication going throughout our body. And gosh, and so the way you word that, the why the placebo actually works. So as far as, so there's multiple pieces, and how technical do we want to go? So I would say, okay, so first and foremost, mind body healing, a simple way to think about it is, we know that stress affects the physical body. And so on a simple note, if we think about a stroke, somebody can have a stroke, like a right brain stroke, can paralyze the left side of the body. A left brain stroke can paralyze the right side of the body. So we can see that wherever there is damage in the brain, it can impact the corresponding part of the body. So if we start with that one awareness, and then we also think that emotions can have a profound impact in the brain. So somebody can have a car accident and experience trauma that can actually shape the brain from a car accident. And so we can see that emotions can impact the body. So that's one way to start looking at it. Now, if we get a little bit more technical, something that's fascinating is that there's something called a homunculus map. And this was created by neuroscientists where they stimulated different parts of the brain. And they could see by stimulating different parts of the brain that it would affect different parts of the body. For example, stimulating the insular cortex, somebody could feel nausea and want to vomit. And so I would say that's one way.
Okay. So extrapolating that onto the placebo area of, um, you know, like a hypothesis of what do you think is actually going on when someone thinks that they're getting or thinks that they're gonna get better because they took something, what's going on like mentally to then translate into the actual healing part?
Okay, so I would say a few things. One, research has shown that a doctor-patient relationship increases the results from the placebo. So I would say that's one. I would say another one is that when people are believing they're healed, it's not about the belief part, because they don't need the belief part about believing it's healed, but optimism. So if we look at the feeling of optimism, research, one study after another has shown that optimism can actually speed up healing. And so I'd say that's another factor. And for example, people after surgery, if they're optimistic, they can heal much faster, must have faster cellular proliferation. People who are in a negative state, much slower. And so, and optimism, I mean, has shown people who are most optimistic can live 15% longer, or even, I mean, we could go through one study after another about optimism. So I would say, if you feel like you're going to get better, there is an optimistic feeling. So there can be a biochemical response. Now, this is something that really struck me during my research was that when we think about it, somebody can take a fake pill and they are told that it will affect their blood pressure. So it does. But somebody else can be told that it affects, it could create a negative response. It could create hives. And so it does. And so something that I was looking at was I thought, well, how is it possible for specific information to be communicated to the cells of the body? Like, how is the body hearing this information? And that actually made me start looking at and understanding energy of the body. And that was a whole nother fascinating topic. A lot of times people think that energy of the body is like woo-woo, the spiritual notion. But research, it was actually discovered in 1923 that our bodies emit biophotons. So you were mentioning, biophotomodulation. Our bodies actually emit biophotons. Now, when it was initially discovered, it was called mitogenetic radiation. What's profound about this is that the medical scientist who researched and discovered this was nominated for the Nobel Prize 11 times, and actually won the Nobel, similar to the Nobel Prize in Russia. And there's research that is currently still going on on, it's now called biophotons, even in top hospitals. So while a lot of people think energy of the body is just a spiritual notion, that it is actually, there's a database that is maintained by the Smithsonian and Harvard. It's under the NASA agreement. And in this, there's research as recent as weeks ago that shows studies on the energy of the body. And point being, where I'm going with this is, if we unpack the energy of the body, and am I overwhelming you with information, or you
No,
go?
this is good. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. So, so this is, I love to geek out on this. So you do too. Great. So this is what's awesome. So if we simplify this all, the energy of the body, simple way to think about biophotons is to first, if we picture a light bulb emits light energy, which is photons, or the sun emits photons, particles of light. So particles of light, the body emits particles of light. And so whereas a light bulb would emit photons, the body emits biophotons, which are from a biological organism. So these biophotons, they're invisible, but these biophotons, which are little faint particles of light that come from the body, research has shown a variety of things. First and foremost, research suggests that they communicate information throughout the body, including homeostasis. Different illnesses have different biophoton emissions. And by the way, some people might say, well, how is it possible for photons, particles of light, to communicate information throughout the body? And then if we look at internet, cell phones, cable TV, it's all run on fiber optics, which is light, light being sent over, or information being sent with light. And so what's fascinating, though, is this research has shown that biophotons have the ability to affect cellular proliferation, that different illnesses have different biophoton emissions, and also that as we change our mindset, our biophoton emissions change as well.
Wow.
So it's fascinating.
Yeah, that's wicked fascinating, as we say in Massachusetts.
I like it. It is wicked fascinating, isn't it?
Yeah, we were talking about that before we jumped on, but I'm joking around about the accent. Sometimes sometimes like wicked. When I say wicked, some people don't get what I'm saying, but yeah.
I get that. Even if I'm in California, I'm not
Okay. All right.
3 hours behind, but not.
Wow, that really is. That's so cool. Hmm.
Right? It's something that's interesting is there's even been recent studies that show that, when participants visualize white light, they'll have biophoton emissions out of the right side of their head, but not the left. Or if somebody's experiencing anger, it can increase biophoton emissions. So there's just all of these. There's a direct, research has shown that there's a direct correlation between biophoton emissions and our thoughts and mindset.
So do you think that the biophotons is essentially like it's the scientific way of scientific explanation just of energy and what like a lot of people refer to as energy, like that person has good energy, this person has bad energy. Sometimes you're around good people. Sometimes you walk into a room and you immediately feel uncomfortable. Whereas if you walk into another room, you feel accepted, you feel welcome. It's the amount of biophotons that are, in that room, or is it something else?
I would say yes and no and yes and no.
Okay.
I would say that, if we walk into a room, it could also be that we have, subconscious triggers that we don't realize,
Yeah.
So yes, but this is what's fascinating, is that the researcher who discovered biophotons, or which were originally called mitogenetic radiation, when he discovered them, how he did so was he put, basically it was biophotons, or this light energy, from one onion root onto another. And it started increasing cellular proliferation. So it started increasing, we'll say, like cellular regeneration, like healing. And to give a simple visualization of like a picture of cell proliferation. A simple way to think about it would be like dish soap. If you pour water on dish soap, the cells or the bubbles, proliferate. And so what's been fascinating is that research has shown that biophotons from one like fish egg can either cause it to proliferate and grow, or even to deform or to stop. So yeah, so in other words, that this energy, this light energy, can actually influence other cells as well. So it's profound.
And as I mentioned with the red light that I was mentioning before, I actually really didn't even know we were going to discuss that, like the photon connection, photobiomodulation, like that. I didn't realize there was a connection there, but it's kind of interesting, a coincidence, I suppose. But is it in like a similar factor, like when you have, positive thinking, positive energy, positive biophotons, is that something that can then, go across the rest of your body and start to heal you? Is that what we're talking about when we're talking about like energy healing?
That's so basically yes. And so that's how I would look at it, is absolutely that our thoughts, and so if you ask me as far as the placebo, how is information getting to our cells? Research has shown, and it's even like published in like MIT articles of research suggests that biophotons can communicate information throughout our bodies. Now, so I would say yes. I as far as communication, absolutely. Now, there's a few things that are interesting. I mean, to be honest with you, it was about, I don't know, 4 or 5 weeks ago, I was speaking with a medical scientist who had read my new book, and he was shocked. He's been a medical scientist for 40 years, and he was like, Brandy, I never even knew biophotons existed. And but most people don't. And so kind of what's happening is that medical, doctors and whatnot, a lot of them are saying, well, energy woo woo and it's just spiritual. And then you go to these databases where you can actually look in, top hospitals or the Smithsonian database, and you see that the research is there, and that, people with like cancerous cells emit different energy than non-cancerous cells. And so, yes, and this is how I want to phrase it, is this: I like to be impeccable with my words. And I would say that there is a direct correlation. Research has shown that there's a direct correlation between that certain like type 2 diabetes emits certain patterns of biophotons compared to people who don't have type 2 diabetes. And that research does suggest that communication is going throughout the body. And so that's what I would say. I would say that all of the information throughout the body is being communicated. And the harder part is that even though it's been around for 100 years, research is still in its infancy. And I'd say part of the reason is because, I mean, it's been continuously studied, but hidden at the same time. And I would say part of the thing is that a lot of medical research of Western medicine has been done using cadavers that don't emit light energy. I would say another thing is that to get the light energy measured from the body, you have to be in complete darkness, because what happens is any light from a light bulb is going to interfere, and then you don't know how much light is coming from the body, and it's so faint. And so it looks like a big, like going into a dark bank vault or a dark closet where they literally like close the door and you're in there and it is completely pitch dark. And that's how they measure it. So to answer the question, I believe this energy is everything. I mean, literally research has shown that it can affect cellular proliferation. So it can affect our cells of our body, and that it communicates information, and that there's different biophoton emissions connected to illness and different illnesses. So, I mean, there's all the data is there, and yet there's still missing links.
Yeah, they still haven't like all the pieces are there. They just haven't connected them yet. Obviously, because it's so new. I mean, you're talking about 1923 when they first discovered it, but how many years have they overlooked it for? And even like you mentioned the researcher, I think, who read your book. It just reminded me of the fact that even doctors today, that, and all the infinite wisdom that they have, in a lot of cases, all the training, all the years of study, all the courses they take, they still only take 23.9 contact hours of study in nutrition, the most important factor of our health, arguably. So, like, never mind this stuff.
Right?
Yeah.
Right. And it's just the very things. And exactly that. And I think doctors' role has become a certain, much respect to them, all of their training and all of that. And you see somebody 15 minutes and you got to run into the next and run into the next. And
Yeah.
so I'd say that's why we have to look outside the box for ourselves and find that answer. And so what I started doing in my own journey is I said, okay, well, how can I use this information? Because I didn't care where the answer came from. I just wanted to get better. And so what I started doing was looking at emotions. And if somebody had told me that emotions could affect my body and heal my body, I would have thought it was ridiculous. But knowing that emotions could influence the energy of the body, plus the biochemistry of the body, and all of these things, and somebody with multiple personality disorder could have different ailments when they were in different personalities. I started just simplifying everything. And I think a few things were really pivotal for me. One was the awareness that, if we look at different emotions, it could affect the body differently. For example, um, if somebody's embarrassed, their face turns red. And we all know that. I mean, even emojis know that. We have that little blushing red face emoji. And okay, well, somebody can have a panic attack, racing heart, shortness of breath, or sexual thought. We all know, different for men and women, but that's a mind-body connection that we can see. We have an emotion and we have a physical response. And so I thought, I'm injured. I'm going to need a lot more than that. But I start looking at emotions, and somebody can die of a broken heart or be scared to death, be so scared their heart stops. Or even current research has shown that, research suggests that autoimmune diseases are caused by stress. And, so all of these things. And so that was key. I started thinking, okay, well, if we know these embarrassment and anxiety and broken heart syndrome and scared to death, what about all the other emotions? What are they doing in our body that we're not paying attention to? What about hurt or resentment or anger or rejection? What's happening with these? And that was a key question, because these emotions are affecting us. We just don't realize it. And so it's profound when you stop and think about just the mind-body connection.
Yeah. What do you think is different, though, from your approach to healing yourself? From being wheelchair bound. First of all, how did that happen? Did you mention that yet?
I don't
I,
know.
I
I had an accident. So I had a car accident, and then I had a fall. And basically, as a car accident, I was already my body was already kind of messed up, and my back was weak. And then I had a fall, and I fell just wrong, just right, however you want to say it. But
yeah,
yeah, a
perfect.
mess.
Yeah, perfect. It's a storm of things. So, what was your approach? How was your approach different from those that that try this type of thing unsuccessfully? Like, they hear about something online where it's, the think and grow rich approach, the secret approach. Like, for some people, it seems like Rhonda Byrne, I think her name was, but for some people who find this stuff, it can be life changing. The power of the subconscious mind, and using energy to heal out of their ailments or whatever it is. Some people, it seems like a small minority, though, a small minority of people see this type of information, and then they can heal from whatever chronic disease they're facing, or illness, or impalement, whatever it is. But then there's a majority of people that find this type of information, and they try to do, some meditative thing, and change their thoughts and think more positively for like a month or two, and they get no success. They see no results, and then they go back and say it doesn't work. So where was your approach
Me.
different? Yeah.
I was like meditating
And I've
and
tried similar things, and it's
oh my God, I was doing meditation, theta state, affirmations, delta, uh, self hypnosis, guided meditation, like all of it for like 5 years,
wow.
and it
Yeah.
didn't work. And in network engineering and operations, I had a 4-hour MTTR, which was a mean time to repair. I was like, it's been not more than 4 hours. It has been more than 4 years, and this is still not working. I need to figure this out. So I would say it's a lot different because there's a few things. One epiphany when it came to meditation was I had this experience where a friend of mine, her aunt was dying of lung cancer, and she asked me if I wanted to say goodbye. And of course, I said yes. And so she came and picked me up. She took me over there, and I went to go say goodbye to her. And as I did, it dawned on me as I saw her, she had been in and out, she had been in hospice and in and out of consciousness. And I thought, gosh, this is what I probably look like all day, laying there in meditative theta state for hours. I mean, 8, 10 hours, 12 hours. I was like all in because sometimes my pain would go down from meditation. And then it made me want to do more and more and more to just heal. And I thought, gosh, if she's not healing and other people who are in this deep state of relaxation aren't healing, like I have to do something radically different. So that was one thing. That was a pivot that said, okay, I have to do something different. I have to understand it. Another really important insight was this, was I was looking at everything objectively. And I said, okay, stress affects the body. We know that. But there are people who have PTSD and extreme stress that aren't sick. And there are people with seemingly less stress who are sick, very sick. How is that possible? And what I began to figure out was that there's certain combinations of emotions. So that is key. And so, a simple way to think about it, if somebody wants to make cake and they have flour, they don't make cake. But if they have flour and they mix it with other ingredients, now they can make a cake. Obviously, illness and pain is not cake. But point being is it different ingredients, different recipe. And so when I looked at like multiple personality disorder, that's why I could see, well, one person could have an illness in one personality, but not in another, or something completely different. So I would say that was profound. And kind of to give you an idea of one thing that could be a recipe would be, some people have been sick for a long period of time. And so it starts to become part of their identity. Oh, I am a sick person. And that can be part of the recipe. And so there's different key emotional components that are important. I would say that. When you ask what is different, I would say that I'm not like, yes, I'll ask people to bring in gratitude sometimes, but not all. Like, it's good to have gratitude, but kind of like you hear gratitude a lot, bring in gratitude. But the problem is that a lot of people might have underlying feelings of guilt or not feeling deserving. And so it's actually backfiring and triggering them and so it doesn't help them. And so I would say that. I would say another thing is that some people like they go, okay, well, I'm going to do trauma healing. And they don't realize, am I overwhelming you with information?
No, this is good. I'm just taking a couple notes because I don't want to miss. There's a couple things I want to bring up and I don't want to miss them. This is great.
Awesome. Okay. So I would say another thing is that we really have to think in terms of patterns in the brain. And if we think about like Freud's work, and we think about repetition compulsion, or law of attraction, or attachment theory, however we want to say it, patterns breed more of the same and attract more of the same. And in psychology, we could look at it. We could say maybe a woman with an abusive father leaves him, finds the abusive boyfriend, boss, spouse, or we can have patterns of feeling always criticized or abandoned or rejected or whatever it is. But I would say a lot of people, they don't change the emotional patterns at the level that's really needed to create a real shift. And I would say that is another key factor is creating that deeper level of transformation.
So in your particular case, what were some of the steps that you took to heal yourself and make it so that after you had that epiphany, you weren't just going to be like going back to meditating for 12 hours a day and praying that it would go away on its own.
That was me. Oh my gosh. Um, uh, I, a couple of things. Okay. So if we just simplify it, one, I would say really understanding that getting new positive mind programming is key, but not just thinking positive, it's important to create positive neural pathways. So I would say that's one thing. I would say another thing is that we have to shift our consciousness regarding the patterns. To simplify this, let's say a simple way is, so I call it emotion controlled perception or emotion controlled consciousness. And what happens is our emotions control our consciousness more than we realize, or our perception. And a simple way to think about this is, if we're really, 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 really in love, what do we see? We see all of the good things in a person, whether we want to or not. Like, we don't say to our brain, hey, I love this person, see all the good. Like, it just happens. Or if we're really pissed off and angry, or we just had an argument, what does the brain do? Automatically fault find or argument or continue with the argument. The brain does that automatically. And so if we're going to heal ourselves, we have to change what the brain is automatically doing, not an afterthought. And so I would say creating new positive neural pathways, and then creating a strong emotional shift. So it is pivotal. So it doesn't just change the way you feel, it's strong enough to also change the way you perceive. And that, I would say, is a huge factor.
So how do you, and I think that's actually something they mention, like Joe Dispenza's work. You've heard of him?
I have, and I would say I'm not a big fan of meditation. So I would say there's a lot of differences between.
Yeah, I've just meant in one particular aspect of what he does. I like him too. I'm not like,
Wonderful guy.
yeah, he seems like a really good guy, actually. Um, I'd love to have him on the show at some point, but like I don't do his meditations and stuff. I tried them in the past. I like they were cool and stuff. I don't do them though, but like any more regularly or anything. But I did like some aspects of it. And one aspect of it that I saw was also seemed to be an aspect of those who were successful in using the secret. I forget the guy's name. I had him on the show a long time ago, but he took the secret too. He's like a billionaire now. Andres Piro or something like that. I forget his name. I'll look it up. But he took the secret, and basically he said the reason why the secret doesn't work for most people is that they don't have that emotional, like it needs to be a strong emotional change of inside them. They can't just like say every day, oh, I'm going to be a millionaire. I'm going to be this. I'm going to be that. They have to back it up with constant emotion and actually feeling what they have. Like, and that's the key of like the people who fail, the people who succeed with this stuff, is that you have to actually act, like not even just act like a certain way, but feel it inside. Like emotionally, it has to be like you have what you want, or that you're getting what you want every day, something like that. And Dispenza says the same thing when he's doing the meditations. It's like it has to be a strong emotional feeling to tap into like this level of healing. Otherwise, it just doesn't work. You sit there and meditate all day and nothing's going to actually like stick because of that emotional lacking that isn't attached to whatever it is that your goal is.
Yes. So yeah, making the emotions really, really, really strong is key. And I would also say that genuinely focusing on the specific emotion is like for healing, and also, as far as the being a millionaire, all of that, and somebody manifesting money. But I would say there's okay. So the two very kind of almost very different topics in a way, and kind of like this. Okay, so one guy that I worked with, and I helped him. He was working on becoming a millionaire, all of these things. One thing in his business that was really stuck, like he basically had this burn rate in his business, all of these things. He was very stuck. Now, something that was stuck in his psyche was he had been proud of never having to borrow money in his company, that he started it on his own, right? And so when it went to go and it was built, growing exponentially, and they have a burn rate and they needed investors, he couldn't find any investors because he had this subconscious pride of doing it always on his own. And so, and then changing that, then his company blew up. He got invested. Like it just, so I would, and I mean, so it depends on as far as money. Cause I've worked with people to make millions and hundreds of millions of dollars. And so there can be certain blocks when it comes to money. And so I would say I would say, as far as meditation, I can give you a simple example. You want to do like I'm going to tell you, there's a really, really ridiculous exercise. And maybe before we do that, actually, can I share my screen? Is that okay? No.
Yeah, I think you can do it.
So I think it looks
I,
like there,
I, I just, it's not going to mess anything up as far as the recording, right? I think it's a fine to do
it,
though.
it won't. I think,
Yeah, go ahead.
could you enable that?
Let me see.
Think there's like on the screen share advanced, it says,
Um, in the bottom, right? Share screen, right? Yeah, there it is.
yeah,
Did you get that or do I,
there's like an up caret that says advanced, and I think then it says enable
oh,
participant to
yeah, there
share
you go.
screen. And so
Got it. Did that work?
it did, it did. Okay,
Sweet.
so kind of to just, because I think, so after I healed myself, I thought, I really need to show how we can get results. And so this is a paper I had, a few case studies that I had published last year in a medical journal. And what I love is you can see the difference. And so let's see. So and what it has to do with is really identifying and addressing the specific negative emotion. And so let's see, the pictures sometimes take a second. There we go. Okay, so this person right here, it took 22 minutes, but basically kind of to illustrate what this is it when we have pain or inflammation, like if we have a sprained ankle or infection or whatnot, the body can emit heat. It has heat patterns that come from it. And so if we look at the image, there's like she had neck pain and upper back pain, and you can see how it's all red over her neck area. And then what I did is I showed her how to use her mind, and these scans are 22 minutes apart, and she was able to then release her pain. And you can see that then the second scan is green. So you see the difference. And what I did is I addressed the specific negative emotions that were affecting it. And I helped it and showed her how to use her mind to do that. Now, and this one took about 47 minutes. So this another, for anybody who's only on audio, this is another one where somebody's neck and back are all red, and then it changed to green. Now, this one I also love, and there's another one, which, oh, here we go. It's right here. What I love about this gentleman is that he had been experiencing, let's see, a level 6 of pain, and he was able to get down to a 0. And this was 28 minutes apart. So you see his pain level 6 and 28 minutes it took. He did it, and I helped him to release his pain. Now, what was fun about this is afterwards, he goes, gosh, I'm surprised that this even worked. I just came from a 10-day meditation retreat and a positive seminar. So it was like he went from a motivational seminar to a 10-day meditation retreat. And I didn't know. So when I worked with him to show his mind, I had no idea, but he was shocked that it worked. And that's kind of the point in it all, is that all the time, and it was funny because also a motivational seminar. So it's not just about positivity. It's not just about relaxation. It's about addressing the specific emotional pattern. That's how I show people how to get radical results. And these are just with pain, but I've seen people do it with autoimmune conditions or a tumor in their throat or all kinds of things. And that's what I'm most known for, is demonstrating results under medical equipment. And so, to me, things like meditation or whatnot is too slow for one, but I did it for years and it didn't heal my body. And there are some type of meditations that can be great. I'm just saying that the way I know how to get results is to identify what the specific negative patterns are, and then to transform them.
So how do you identify specific negative patterns? Like in say some of those patients that come in, like someone walks in with a neck pain that they've had for 10 years and it's like a 6 or 7. How did you bring that down to a 0? Like what is the process of you talking to them, training them, whatever, working with them? How do you bring that down to a 0? I think it was a 6 to a 0 within 25 minutes.
And he did it, yeah, 28 minutes. For that specific person, he had like kind of there was like a resistance towards authority, and so that's what I was looking for, is there was a resistance towards authority. And with his case, like it was like, you don't have to resist authority, you are authority. And so it was more about him being in his power, because so sometimes men will experience it with their wives or their spouse or whatnot, where they're feeling all this, it could feel like, my wife's a pain in the neck, or my wife's always nagging me, and there's that resistance. And then so in his so it really becomes about saying, okay, well, like, for example, what's a pain in the neck? What's happening that's a pain in the neck? And in his case, it was authority. And so again, I always tell people, I make this look very easy. There's an understanding to it. And part of the problem is that, if we go to get dressed in the morning, and if we put on our shoes first and then try to put on our pants, it would be really hard or even impossible to get dressed. We would all be struggling to get our pants on. And that doesn't happen because we know that there's an order. We put on our pants first, then our shoes. It's easy. And everything, we go to drive a car, there's an order that you follow. You go to type on the computer, there's an order that you follow. Mind programming, people are like, I don't know, let me just throw some things at it. And so I would say, I would say there's an order. Every time I work with somebody, there is an order in working with the mind that is so important. And so wanting to emphasize, do I think that the average person is going to be able to jump in and get rid of their pain in 28 minutes? No, but have I had people who've been able to learn, and then they say, I just healed my pain, I just did this. Yeah, absolutely. And it's incredible. And I think if you're up for a super silly exercise, I'll show you why you want to go beyond meditation. Are you up for, I'm telling you, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So I'm warning you, like, beyond ridiculous, just so you know, but afterwards, it's also very, very insightful. That, like, afterwards, the insight that comes from it is this.
Okay.
All right. So if I ask you to just for a moment to close your eyes.
Mm-hmm.
And if you picture for a moment that somebody is making you your favorite meal ever. They're making you your favorite meal ever. And what that would feel like to you if they're making you your most favorite meal ever. What it would feel like. And so just noticing that. And then I'm going to ask you to just breathe and let that go completely. Let it go and manifest that in your future. Great. And now shifting gears completely different vision, completely different, shifting gears. I'm going to ask you to picture yourself that you have a silver spoon, and you take this spoon and you take a huge scoop of worms and you take it towards your mouth to eat it. And notice what emotion comes up for you. Now, delete. Okay, delete. All right, now this is what happens. First and foremost, you can go ahead and open your eyes, but first and foremost, remember, it's profound, and I warned you, it's ridiculous. Number one is that if people go into that vision really deep, you can start to feel a sense of disgust, or even like you want to vomit, just from an imagined thing that didn't actually ever happen. Number one. Number two, our ancestors ate worms. So this is programmed into us. It's not innate. It is programmed into us. Number three, I could meditate for 10 more years, and that programming is never going to go away. I could think positive. I could go to 5,000 positivity seminars. I could meditate for 20 years. And that programming isn't going to go away unless I say, I want to reprogram how I feel about this. And so what happens is people have different triggers, different wounding, different upset and emotional things. And then they go to all these positivity things and they go to the meditation. But unless they just address that specific wounding, then they make that change of whatever that emotional trigger is that's going on at a deeper level. And so that's how I help people, is I say, okay, what is the worm, so to speak? What is the problem? What is the trigger that's going on that's unknowingly affecting your body. So in the case of the worm, somebody could feel like they wanted to vomit. And that's, again, it's programming. And so what is that thing that's affecting the neck pain, the back pain, the illness, the what are those components, and how do we just address them and change them? And so that's like, to your point, you said, there's a very small percentage of people who do get lucky and then they find that thing and then they change it. But I was not one of them. Like, I needed to figure out what was that specific thing and then just change it. And that's how I've been able to, like, even in the medical journal, what do? I help people. Okay, they have neck pain, they have back pain, they have an autoimmune condition, such and such, whatever health issue. Okay, well, let's identify what is the problem emotion, what's going on, and let's change that. So that's what I do.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Is there always a problem? Is there always, so to speak, a worm that you can locate that's causing the pain though? Or is there just some instances, for example, where like an emotional trigger isn't actually the cause of the pain and they have like a legitimate, if you want to call it that, like a legitimate injury or something like that, where it's just totally unrelated from some type of emotional trigger or trauma, but it's actually like an injury, like someone got hit by a car and they actually have marks on them that wouldn't, and just say it was an acute, like it just happened yesterday, like that obviously wouldn't be attached to an emotional thing because it just happened. Maybe it's a different story 10 years from now, but would that person be able to find like their own, or would you able to help that person find their own worm in that situation when there's not an emotional trigger attached to that pain? Does that make sense?
So I would say, yeah. So I would say every single time, like even my situation, I had an accident and a physical
Mhm.
accident, spinal end plate fractures. So I had multiple things in my own life, and there was an emotional component. I have never seen anybody not have an emotional component. But furthermore, even if we think about people who have surgery, which there's obviously a physical injury, if they're in a place of optimism, their healing is exponentially better. If
Yeah.
they're in a place of negativity and fear, rehospitalization, complications, slower cellular proliferation. So that's his physical injury. And even things like they've done research of people where they put like a burn mark on them and then monitor their level of stress. People with burn marks that, they'll do a burn injury, so to speak, heal much faster if they're optimistic. If they're in a negative state, fear, frustration, they take a lot longer to heal. So even something like that. So I would say always, I think, on a metaphysical level, I would say everything happens for a reason. That's
Mhm.
what I would say with my injury. Everything happened for a reason, which we could look at that and say it's woo woo. But the truth of it is if we look at, the woman with the abusive father leaves him and finds the abusive boyfriend, boss, spouse, et cetera, et cetera. It's not like she says, where can I find the next abusive relationship? Or even re-victimization. Even if we set psychology aside and we even just look at statistics, crime reports, people who have had the most abuse as a child have a much higher rate of re-victimization as an adult, and that's proven in crime statistics and whatnot. And so however you want to say it, whether you want to call it attachment theory, law of attraction, manifesting, repetition, compulsion, or magic, whatever you want to call it, we can see it everywhere.
Yeah. It definitely it makes it, are there some, is there some conditions that it wouldn't affect? Like I know you said it, you see it everywhere, but I guess I kind of know the answer to this, but I
I've
suppose,
never I've never seen an illness that said, oh, there's no emotional component to it. Never.
okay. Yeah,
So, I mean, have I worked with 8 billion people yet? No.
no. I
So
guess the better question though is like which conditions does this work more effectively in from your experience?
if I've seen people genuinely change, I've never seen it not work. Now, the fastest that I use all the time is I use pain all the time. And the reason being is because people can experience the shift. But even, for example, one woman that went through my course, she had POTS, tachycardia, with low blood volume. So her body was not making enough blood.
Wow.
So if she sat up, all the blood goes down, she would pass out. Her heart would race, 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 and she would pass out. She was bedridden for almost 8 years. She's now running. She was able to do a marathon, walk a marathon, and run, and travels the world, and she's fine. So now her body is magically making more blood again. So, I mean,
That's
the
incredible.
things that I see are really incredible. And it took her, after she started my program, it took her about 9 months for her, in her case, because she also was like allergic to everything under the sun, all but like 8 foods. She also had mast cell and a lot of different issues as well. So she had all of these things, and then she got rid of pain and started being also worked to get no longer allergic to foods, and then so it took her about 9 months to start walking fully, and then she walked her first marathon about 2 months later. So it was like a Thanksgiving turkey trot type of thing, where she walked her first marathon with her family, and then got her license a week after that. So
Wow.
I mean, point be, like, I see, yeah, incredible, incredible things.
Have you worked with any hospice patients aside from that one you mentioned before? I don't think you worked with her specifically, but that was like the epiphany for you. But have you worked with anybody like severely sick and like on life support, hospice care, anything like that?
Not
Not
really.
yet.
No,
Not
not
yet.
yet. You know, I right now, kind of basically after I healed myself, I started wanting to show others, and then as I was showing other people how to release their pain, and yes, I've seen people who were stage 4 and told that they were supposed to be checked out, who are now healed themselves and all kinds of things. So but not, I don't think in that case we're in hospice, but I'm pretty sure that they weren't, but I don't know, because I don't, yeah. So, um, but then, yeah, just showing people how to heal themselves, and then showing it under medical equipment. So I wouldn't say that I've worked with many people in hospice.
But it
Or
sounds like that's a future option if it is as powerful, which like it seems, right?
yes, and my biggest goal right now, so I've written this book. My biggest goal is to empower a lot of people. I mean, it's so yes, it absolutely. I mean, I've worked with people who were Alzheimer's, who then got undiagnosed with Alzheimer's.
Wow.
And so I've seen that. So it wasn't in hospice, but his wife was like taking care of him, and didn't know what day of the week it was, didn't know, like, I mean, he would say, come in and be like, oh, well, yeah, we went to Bakersfield this weekend. And his wife's behind him going, I don't know what he's talking about, like shaking her head, like, so, I mean, it's all kinds of things. But um, ultimately, what I'd love to see is that, when you stop and think about it, if you imagine people are walking around having anxiety attack, and they don't know it's from emotions. They don't know emotions are playing a role in it. And they go, oh my gosh, check my heart, check my lungs. Like, why is this happening? My heart racing. Is my heart okay? And they don't realize that there's an emotional component. And once they then do, they can, of course, then create that change. And it's like we're all walking around and we don't realize that our nerve issues, our pain issues, our autoimmune, all of these things are all connected to um, are connected to our emotions, our mindset. And, something you mentioned as far as hospice, if you think about it, spontaneous remission is also well known, where people can suddenly be in late stage illness and suddenly have a remission for no possible reason. Now, I would say they have a sudden change of heart, something happens in that they have a sudden change of emotions and they don't realize it. But so we know that's possible with spontaneous remission. And so I would say that's true, but I would also say that, it would be great to see everybody. We have depression is going on like crazy because we don't understand how emotions work. We don't understand that we have power to reprogram our minds, or how to do it. And so when we look at depression or we look at illness, what if everybody started saying, hey, we can do this? And that's like you mentioned, doctors don't even with much respect, doctors don't even get nutrition and nutrition supplements and or information on nutrition and studying that and food. And if we're going to do this, we all kind of have to wake up and say, let's create the change. So that's really where my focus has been.
Yeah, and just real quickly, the emotional change that's happening, it really seems to be the core, the most important part of this healing. It reminds me a little bit of NLP. Are you familiar with NLP at all?
I am familiar with
Is it similar to that as far as like the transition that takes place is because it seems rapid. Like this is like 25 minutes of like, tangible 6 to 0, which 6 is very, intense for a lot of people. I mean, I haven't seen anything as rapid as I have emotionally in changing things as I have in people that have used NLP successfully.
I've never seen anything like my work either. And that's why I ended up doing my TED talk, all of these things. I've never seen anything like it. And that's actually why I just started, showing, and I do it all of the time. Like my podcast, I take volunteers who are experiencing physical pain and just show them how to release their pain. That's like, it's a thing. And I would say, I wouldn't say, I would say it's a lot different from NLP. And the reason is because there's so many different insights with emotions that people don't realize. And I mean, for one, it's that all the time you see people say, just let negative emotions go, let the negativity go. Well, typically there's something that's miswired in the mind. So it's common for somebody to have a miswired mind. That's what I usually find in illness also. And a simple way to think about this is, let's say somebody has a feeling of pride and hardship. Well, they may want to let go of the hardship because nobody wants hardship, but then they have the feeling of pride connected to it. So now you can't let it go. Or let's say somebody has linked up love to sympathy. Well, what happens in that case is they want to let go of sympathy or problems or the hurt, but they don't want to let go of love. And so what happens is that then these patterns perpetuate. Now, another thing is, we talked about previously emotion controlled consciousness. And this is a core piece. And what I would say is and I call it the emotion consciousness cycle. Is a simple example is that imagine somebody who experienced abandonment or rejection. And so they've experienced that. And then let's say they've had this pattern going on throughout their life. And so they're in this relationship, and then their husband calls 10 minutes late. Now they're feeling rejected or hurt or put somebody as a priority. Like they have all of these emotions. And then in which case they're perceiving in a certain way. They're super sensitive about this. They're feeling triggered and they're feeling needy, which then ends up what? Perpetuating the problem. After a while, he's like, I can't deal with this anymore. And so what happens is, our patterns shape what we perceive, then they shape our reaction to it. Then we end up perpetuating the problem. We don't see that we're caught in that pattern. And so a key piece of my work is really about understanding that emotions are that we're in a certain consciousness, and that then we need to start transforming that pattern and creating and amplifying specific negative emotion or specific positive emotions. So even in creating new neural pathways, it's not just positive neural pathways, it's actually positive neural pathways that help transform that specific pattern. And so transforming that and then amplifying the emotions. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry, I was just going to say, so in that specific case there, with the fear of abandonment type of thing, what would be like a counter positive pattern that you would help the patient or client facilitate in their own thinking?
Let's say that they started bringing in a feeling that they were securely loved and safe. And then they started amplifying those feelings and really, really feeling them very, very strong. And so they started feeling that, seeing that, amplifying that, bringing that in and feeling that, and then creating new neural pathways with that. So now it becomes automatic. It's not like, oh, I'm just going to think positive. Like they really think, okay, I call it your 180 shift. So, okay, identify what's the problem. Okay, now we need the new 180 shift. What is that new 180 shift? And then creating that and really creating a genuine change. Because imagine for a moment, if there's a woman who feels like guys suck, her husband left her and all men cheat and are unfair and blah, 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 and she feels this way. And then you say, okay, you're sick and I need you to let this upset go. Now she feels all men are this way and she's been hurt and she's never going to be loved again and blah, blah, blah. Well, telling her to just let this wounding go is not really realistic. But if I said, okay, create these new neural pathways. You see yourself securely loved with an amazing man. It's really wonderful. You feel loved, you feel connected. And she starts bringing it and programming these neural pathways into her mind. And then you say, okay, well, now can you let this old guy go and really let that wounding go? Now it's a real reality. Now it's actually something that's doable. And then it's that creating that shift. Now it's doable to start letting that go, but it's always miswired in the mind also. So it's not just saying, oh, we'll release this. Now it's going, okay, well, why is your brain still holding on to this? What is that core belief? Why is it miswired in the brain? Does that make sense? I don't want to
Yeah.
overcomplicate, but yeah.
No. So then how do
So
you deal with that aspect of it?
that aspect, okay, so something may have happened like this. So there's a few key pieces. One is that let's say that she had this abandonment pattern from her husband, but it really started with her dad. And then after that happened, her mom gave her a ton of love. Now she has love linked up to the wounding. And so what happens, or she has it belief after her father left that I can never trust men again, and it's safer to not trust men. So in other words, her body is either holding on to the wounding because maybe it's safe, or maybe because she feels love from it, or something. There is something holding on to it. And so repatterning that in the mind is key. And so it's not just pushing through it, because you don't get results by pushing through it for healing. It's repatterning and reprogramming. So, I would say, like in this case, that problem is not keeping you safe, or you're not getting love from that. You're getting love because you're amazing. Or it's safer to actually start seeing more of the amazing men and not the blah, 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 right? And so it's creating a genuine repatterning, then releasing the problem as well. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but how long does the repatterning process take? Like, are we talking about a session of you going over there, like almost like a therapist would go over these certain problems and kind of give them insights that they may not be able to recognize on their own? Are we talking about like a session of this? Or are we talking about like multiple sessions over weeks or months?
I mean, again, like if you ask me even today, so my first one interview that I was on was with a guy who had an autoimmune condition. I worked with him one time. It's 98% gone. He was shocked, and he had me on his show.
Wow.
We did a recording for something. So, and one thing. Now, I'm going to tell you, this guy followed through. Now, an easy way to think about it is like this. Have you ever tried to change somebody who didn't want to change?
Yeah, it's impossible. It's
Exactly.
frustrating and impossible, and I've learned my lesson.
Bingo. Exactly. Now, have you ever tried to help somebody who did want to change?
Yeah,
Rewarding.
yeah.
So everybody can be on the scale in between there. So I've worked with people to help them to shift out of pain. Boom, one time, amazing, done. I even took a woman who had a tumor in her throat. Tumor was there, and there's like a video on my website of her standing outside the hospital. I worked with her one time. Tumor went away, her ENT, because she had actually been scheduled for surgery. So we worked on a Thursday. She showed up on Friday, actually Friday the 13th, funny enough, showed up for Friday for surgery, and the tumor was gone. And they had just taken another MRI of that, and the tumor was gone. And the ENT said, I've never seen anything like this in my 30 years of experience. And so
Oh, in 24 hours we're talking about?
well, I would say probably even less than 20. Yeah, less than 24 hours.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah. And it's, you can see a video of it she's literally standing outside of the hospital in tears. And she also sent me like pictures of her ENT, and he's in scrubs, and he's just like, and he said, I can't operate on something that's no longer there. And she was shocked, he was shocked. And so my point is, it all depends on how fast somebody can change. We've all tried to change somebody who doesn't want to change, and good luck with that. But somebody who does want to change and says, okay, look, I'm willing to change. I see results fast. And of course there can be layers, there can be
Yeah.
layers that can hold us back. And so we have to, the one thing above all is it takes genuine change. You can't trick universe, God, divine energy, body, whatever, mother nature, our bodies, you can't trick it.
Yeah, I mean, if what you're saying is true, and I believe you, that really is possibly the most powerful thing, out there as far as healing goes. I don't think there's ever been a situation documented in history where someone has been able to remove a tumor in less than 24 hours. But we're at the cusp of this unbelievable research, and I think uh it's just kind of like mind blowing in a lot of ways because everything we've been told since we've been born has been that you need radiation, you need chemotherapy, you need years of remission before they can call it even a cure, and all this hard work, and you're going to lose your hair and you're going to have to do this and that, and it's just like, so to be able to hear something like this, I think for a lot of people it's just like shocking. A lot of people probably won't believe it at first hearing it. um but I've been in this space long enough to actually have an open mind to know that this thing really is possible, and studied a lot of this stuff, similar things, not identical to what you're teaching, but similar to the extent of knowing that these types of things do happen. And it's quite amazing to hear. I love it though. I love hearing that you're doing this type of work and helping a lot of people.
That's the thing also. And by the way, because most people wouldn't believe it, I know that. So there's like pictures of her
You get
standing
the
outside the
video and
hospital. There's like there's also, I mean, I did actually a podcast episode on it because I'll tell people straight up, most people will not get results that fast because most people will not change that fast.
yeah.
And that's why even with this study right here, where I show people how to get out of pain, I'm gonna tell you, some people, they'll embrace the change and they'll say, okay, I've changed. Other people might leave and then maybe they go back into their old patterns, and then the pain comes back and they go, oh, okay, I got to change. Or maybe they get triggered by their wife, husband, whomever, and go, okay, I've really, really got to change. And so even, even in this study that I wrote, like every one of them, I tell them, you have to follow through. I make this look stupidly easy. And I do. And I'm going to say that 100 times. I make it look ridiculously easy. But this is simply what it comes down to is this. We all know that stress affects the physical body. That has been proven over and over. So what happens if we undo that? What happens? If you think about a few things for a moment, our entire body is constantly repairing and replacing cells. Even medical research has shown that we have a whole new skeleton approximately every 10 years. So how is it possible for us to have that old football injury from high school if our body is constantly repairing and replacing cells? So that's one thing I started looking at. I was like, okay, well, either I wonder then if my body's recreating illness, or why does the pattern keep, like, what's happening? So I would say there's that. And I would also say that when it comes to mind body healing, most people, they're not going to change the pattern at the level that they need to. They think they've changed, but they have, like, for example, a lot of people think, like, they say, oh, I've forgiven somebody. They think that's enough. And that is literally like going to the refrigerator, opening it up, seeing old food in the fridge and saying, I forgive you, and then closing it and thinking it's gone. Just because you forgive something doesn't make it go away. And so I would say that there's kind of like this. Let's be honest. There are a lot of people who spend years in therapy and then kill themselves. We're not working with those. So I would say the biggest thing is people don't understand how to work with the mind. How can you spend years and years and years and years and years in therapy and working on yourself and then commit suicide? It obviously, and nothing against therapist or any direction. I mean, I've done, I didn't know how to work with my mind until I figured out a different way to do it. And all I'm saying is that that's what I want people to work with the mind in a different way. I want them to understand we can do this. Do I want people to think they can do it in 10 minutes or 28 minutes? Likely they're not going to, and that's why I always tell people, still make sure, see your doctors, follow, but know that when we look at it, we know that stress affects the physical body. And another way, if we even just look at this, we've heard of healing throughout history. In fact, in the Bible, 3,000 years ago, it's written, a merry heart is a medicine to the body. Ill thoughts will dry the bones. Here we are 3,000 years later saying, well, stress affects the physical body. And yet we're not doing anything about it. And this is basically just saying, okay, well, what is stress? Stress is negative emotions. Okay, well, if we look at negative emotions, we can't clump them all together because we can look at emojis and see that different emotions affect our body differently. How are you going to clump emotions together? We go, okay, embarrassed, red face, panic attack, anxiety. Okay, well, why would we clump everything together in stress then and just instead look at emotions and say, well, what is each emotion doing? It actually, when you look at it, in fact, on my book, a neurologist, a well-known neurologist, David Perlmutter, wrote the foreword to my book. And in his foreword, he wrote this, something to the effect of that it should be essential reading for people who are sick as well as caregivers, and that basically this looks like the work that the medical community is inadvertently overlooking. And so, powerful. And I get that a lot of people won't, will think this is impossible. I would have too. And that's what's really drove me to start showing it under medical equipment.
Yeah, it's amazing. And Dr. Perlmutter, I've read his books in the past. I'm familiar with his work on the brain and other things. And he's a brilliant guy himself in his own right. But wow, what you're teaching, Brandy, is incredible. I'm gonna actually get the book myself. I haven't been able to read it, which is why I had the pleasure of having you on today to get a sneak peek and to pick your brain and ask all these great questions. I'd love to follow up with you at some point too and get you back on the show after I read the book, get more of an understanding of it, maybe implement some of these things into my own life and some people I know. But yeah, I'd love to get you back on the show at some point down the road. But for now, where is a place our listeners can check out your book? I believe it's going to be out by the time of this recording. If it's not, they can pre-order it as well. But actually, no, by the time this is released, it will be out because it's coming out very soon. So what's the name of the book? Where can they grab it? And what's the site and everything?
It is Master Your Mind and Energy to Heal Your Body. You can get it anywhere books are sold, Barnes and Noble, Amazon. And then on my website, there's also a link. It's called See Live Healing, where I work with somebody who's in pain, who has neck pain under medical equipment on the video. And so you can also see it live there. So that's a great
Awesome.
resource.
Guys, make sure you check out the book, Master Your Mind and Energy to Heal Your Body. Brandy, what's the last send-off takeaway message you'd like to leave the audience? It's been a fascinating interview. I really appreciate your time.
Absolutely. It's that, the 5 minute or the 4 minute mile, the 4 minute mile, human beings used to feel like it was impossible to be able to run a mile in under 4 minutes. And then Roger Bannister did it, and I believe it was in the 1950s. And after he did it, it became a new standard. Now, there's a couple of things we can see from this. Belief was part of it, and there's also a skill. Like if you ask me, could I go run a mile in 4 minutes right now? I would tell you no. Like I would need to train and understand how to do it and really work at it to be able to do it. But knowing that we can was a pivotal point. And similarly, I see that people doing the same thing. They go, okay, well, we can actually heal with the mind, and they start to get it. And then of course, it's the skill of understanding how to do it. But that's what I would say is the more that we understand we can and then learn how to do it, it's like the 4 minute mile or the 4 minute mind. And it's not that we need to heal in 4 minutes, but it's understanding that we all hold more power than we think we do. And just the more everybody wakes up. I mean, we're spending trillions of dollars in healthcare, and more people are getting sick. And clearly, if it was working what we were doing, we wouldn't all be looking outside of the box for answers. And so it's profound what we're capable of. So
Yeah.
that's what I'd like to leave everybody with is we're amazing. It's not just me who can heal. We're all amazing.
Amen. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that, Brandy. And thanks again for coming on, guys. Check out the book. It seems like it's an incredible book. I'm going to grab it myself. Master Your Mind and Energy to Heal Your Body. Thanks again for coming on. Really do appreciate your time, and I'll talk to you soon.
That sounds great. Thank you so much, Justin, for having me.